Hi there. Unfortunately, this one will be in. No, actually, we will go with English. This one was so, yeah. So, so it's not unfortunate. It's actually in English. In a way, I feel somewhat not. It was a while since I practiced speaking English in this sense, but anyway. Since I've not had the same continuity in doing these videos, I feel, yeah, I just noticed that it's disconnected somewhat to the previous ones, and I'm not even sure what I've talked about. Yeah, well, it's at least less easily available to me. But around, I remember talking about a lot about caffeine and so forth, and I'm not sure I did one last week. At least it could be 2 weeks ago, but 1 or 2 weeks ago. So at least I'm keeping to the schedule. If I did one last week, minimum one a week, I think is good. Sometimes much more, but anyway. So I'm thinking about, yeah, health is something that I've been thinking quite a lot about, and because for different reasons, like for example the test that I got. Well, actually, I must have. No, it could be 2. No, wait a minute. It's. Okay, never mind. So yeah, I did this sort of DNA test that said that I was, and I remember talking about this here in Swedish though, so most of you might have not heard about it, but I did this DNA test and tested for a lot of things, and I actually done one, I think it was almost 3 years ago, or 2, and both of them indicated one thing, that was that I have higher needs for antioxidants, and it was for this too, but it was a reminder, and also they were quite more specific on how much I would need. So, and yeah, along with listening to a guy named Daniel Smachtenberger, and he was kind of a health guy, where he knows a lot about it, but he's also very serious. So he's seriously smart, and yeah, he is also the one who's partly responsible for this nootropic that I take. I'm not on it today actually, because it's Saturday and I don't take it on Fridays and Saturdays. But anyway, a little more than a week ago, I experienced a quite great increase in my mood, and it happened to be that I had just eaten a lot of vegetables when that happened, and actually this happened on, I think it was Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or something like that, and also Monday was initially quite good, but it was also when I was with my parents, where I came to them Friday evening, and stayed there for a little longer time, and so what I started to do, especially those, if I remember that right, I think it could be a whole week, but I think it was like Wednesday, Saturday, or Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I really ate a lot of good things. Like, for example, I had some really old, I think they're perhaps 2 years old, goji berries, but they were dried, so I don't think it was okay to eat, and they're famous to be really high in antioxidants, but not only that, I just eat ate a lot of vegetables and so forth, and berries and fruits, which is essential for antioxidants and for. So I just experimented with that, and obviously all these foods contain lots of other ingredients that are really essential for the body to work. So it's not about only antioxidants, it's a lot of other things too. But so, and I also, one other thing I did was that I exercised quite hard, not brutally hard, but hard, or not really. Well, it was probably not like from 1 to 10. It was probably not like 8. It was more like 7.5 or something like that. But yeah, it was still hard. And when I say like a 10 for me, this scale that I use is quite strong. I don't know a better word for it, but it's like, what I mean is, when I say a 10, I mean the most unpleasant experience you've ever, like cutting off your hand is nothing compared to a 10, except for maybe potentially the psychological, traumatical experience of knowing that you have lost your hand. But the physical pain is still like that. And so, even though so that when I say 7.5 is still quite high, but it was not an 8. Definitely not. But I'm coming to that secondly, because I did do that later on, like 8, not really 8.5, but maybe. So it's still quite. No, actually, it's 8, not more than that. But it was for a longer period of time, and it's not always pushing yourself. Your body is not exactly the same as pushing pain, so it's hard to measure exactly. But so I would argue it was not on the pain way. It was not as much as brutal as in, or it wasn't brutal, but as challenging as it was in for my body. But I'll come to that, because that was what I did 3 days later, and that's when it ended. So I tried to figure out, was it really the exercise, or was it what I ate during these days? And because I did this exercise in the morning at Friday, which was the first one, the 7.5 sort of, and compared to what I've done earlier, we'll just stick with that. I did quite intense exercise with strength, because I heard it's good for male hormone optimization, actually, which is, it sounds so fancy, and I usually, when people talk about it, I think of it as some nerdy thing that's not really that impactful, and you're just thinking it's important because you're a nerd. But I heard that one thing for it was like doing, what is it called, not crunches, what's it called, squats. So that's sort of the best thing for. So I started to do that, but outside I had some things in the woods, just doing something quite odd, but it works well. And it also outside gym with some tools. So I also did another exercise that is similar to, I don't want to, but it's quite similar to squats. But anyway, so not those conventional I forgot the name for that too, but anyway, so I tried to figure out what was it that made me so, because I was really in a good mood for quite some time, in a way that I hadn't been for probably for in yeah I would say, well, last time was probably when I was on quite much caffeine, and that was probably, let's see, 1.5 months ago. I think that was what I did that. But so as I was really interested in why did that happen, why I so focused and felt so well. And I always thought about if it's a social thing, and meeting my parents is not something that I believe is very impactful in how I feel in the initial interactions. It can have long-term consequences, positive and negative, but just in that. But it's always something I want to take into consideration and think about, is it really affecting? Because I do know that it does affect you. I think it really does affect me to some extent, depending on. So it's also the factor of how positive was the interactions and so forth. And it wasn't like, I can't bring to mind that it was as positive as the outcome, how I felt. So the reason that I'm somewhat skeptical is because I try to continue to do that to a quite large extent, and I haven't really felt it came down. So that's the thing. So I try to think about, was it the exercise rather that made it exercise? So that was my main hypothesis, that it was good antioxidant rich and just good food in general, with all the micronutrients, all of them, vitamins and minerals and all that, just because you eat well, and fibers and all that, and not too much of grains and some type of grains. But the issue is that it lasted for that Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and on the Monday morning I thought I was really in a good mood and all that, but I thought that perhaps I'll try to make another exercise that was hard, because that was really one thing that I hypothesized, that it was the hard training. And so I did quite hard, and harder this time, so it was probably an 8. It wasn't that painful, but I think it affected me quite strongly, because I took a run for 15 minutes to a place with quite fast, but still not. And actually I did it on an empty stomach before I took my nootropic, actually, because I feel great when I do it. I can exercise without food, without feeling bad. I actually enjoy it. It feels better in the stomach and so forth. But although I had an issue when I ran back, but later, I'll come through that later, because I came to a place where they have this, what's it called? Weight for, it's an outside gym, but they had a sort of primitive bar. I forget the English name, but you know what you do is squats and so forth. So I did some front squats, like you have the bar before you, and I did some, or before that I actually did some, I think it's called clean. You get the bar to this position, like that, you just, or snatch. I forget what's in English, but so I did some of those, not that many, because it was the first time in probably a half a year or a year, almost a year, and I could feel, it's a quite a fast movement, so it felt more safe to do these front squats, and I did some of them, really pushing myself, but with that weight I could do 4 maximum, and going really deep, and I was also quite tired after running, and the high intensity in general, because I took very short breaks in between resting, so just slightly more than a minute or so. But I did sort of 3 or 4 series, and then I did this conventional. I forgot the name, but you have it on the ground and you just pick it up and then you drop it, pick it up, drop it. Can't wait yet. How can I forget what it's called? Anyway, I did that for a while, and so that then I could do 12 reps and 3 sets, I think. And then after that, I just ran back, and I was quite tired, so I did walk for a time. And after that, I started to run, and I run quite fast in intervals. So I was really out of breath, and that's when my stomach issue actually did appear, because I've always had some of it. Always when I push in exercise, it's something that's lures behind. Sometimes I don't feel it, but I happen to feel it here. But I thought that, well, it's not that intense, and I haven't been eating something, so I can. Doesn't really matter. But then after a while, I just walked for a short distance, and then I took a slow jog, the last sort of 200-300 meters, and then I was finished, and it didn't feel as bad as my mood did later on. But so I've heard this, that hard exercise or exercise in general is good up to a point and so on. And so that could be an element, or if it was too close, but still, like 2 days, or actually 3 days, well, 2 resting days, so it's 3 days between the exercises, Friday morning to, this was Monday morning, and it felt great as long as I did it, and it felt great during the day, and I felt somewhat tired in the end of the day, but still like positive and good mood and cheerful. And also read that I have a theory that is sort of about what is healthy is some type of intensity. Like we talk about positive and negative stress oftentimes, but what's easy to forget is that some level of stress is healthy, in the sense that if you just lie in your bed, if you're a normal person who's not extremely sick for a time, if you just lie in bed all day, and I mean just closing your eyes and resting and not activating yourself in any way, like it's not just physical exercise, I mean just being passive and not get your cortisol up and all that is essential for your body to be healthy in the long run in general. So that stress is good. But what was I? Yeah, so my theory that I've been thinking about, or it's a concept that connects like social positive stress, hormones, what is it more? I forgot all the components, but it's sort of, it's really essential to get going sometimes, but also to rest and get downtime quite a lot. So you need both. And I'm sorry, I forget exactly what it was about, but I get reminded of this when I heard about this male hormone optimization, mainly testosterone, but also other things too, that you need the intensity and go in order to feel good, and partly to increase testosterone for sure, but for other reasons too, for sure. And so so that was my theory, and I thought it was, so I was quite careful of being in the go mode, especially in the initial part of the day. And but it turned out that, and I don't actually remember what I ate that to lunch that day, but for the evening I ate 2 sort of mackerel in English, mackerel, which is sort of the best you can eat, almost the best thing you can eat, or well, that's really generalizing, but in terms of meat and in terms of well, just the best fish, is that's one of the best things you can eat, basically because of the omega-3 fats and so forth. But two of those and a lot of spinach, which was heated up, which I heard is even better to get a lot of the magnesium. And yes, I hear that I'm talking about a lot of sort of nutritional things here, and I do think there is a lot of people that might go too deep to it and be the man with the hammer syndrome and just think that it's all about the vitamins and nutrients of life and nothing else, like nerds that, not to be picky, I usually like nerds, but if you don't see the whole picture, you tend to think that the only thing, all the solutions to the world problems is in the knowledge that you have. But I still think it's somewhat important, this thing, or at least I'm exploring it to see if I feel different. And so so it was healthy, but although it was with rice, and I did eat some additional rice after my first sort of first meal, and but it was not an enormous amount of rice, because I did know that it's not too good to eat too much of it. But then also during the day I did eat, I think, not 2 fruits but 3 fruits, and I did eat a lot of what's it called? Oatmeal, which I had done earlier too, during these days when I felt so good. So, but I guess I ate somewhat more. Well, I'm not sure how much more, but somewhat more. But not, yeah. It was so large amount of oatmeal already, so I couldn't really increase that. But and I forget what I ate for lunch, and then afterwards, or the day after, again I was somewhat tired in the morning, but I decided to, because it should be mentioned, I'm trying to sorting out, is it exercise, is it what I'm eating, or is it just stress and too little rest? Because what another component in this that's really important is that I worked basically all day these 4 days, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and when I did this I worked partly because I had some assignments in the math course I'm taking, and I was sort of behind, or it took longer than I had thought, and I didn't want to, because I get some money when I work for my parents, or I help them with some stuff, and I didn't want to diminish that amount just because I had, so I ended up working until 8 p.m. or 8 and a half, 8:30 or 8:45, especially to the second days. So I didn't really have much time, and in addition to that, I did this hard exercise, and I was somewhat stressed, but not. I still felt good, but then after that day, I did get up quite as early as usually, but I skipped meditation on Tuesday, which is another thing to note. I'd been meditating for probably like a month or so, almost every day, I think. But at least the last 2 weeks I had been doing it continuously, half an hour a day, I think. But I skipped meditation just because I wanted to get some extra money, and so I worked as usual, and I actually skipped studying that day too, and then I just figured out that actually went, after I had worked for quite some time, until 4 or something. I went shopping some food, and then me and my dad went to look at an apartment, an apartment. So I was doing things all the time, really. And then I came home and did that. And since then I felt, except for yesterday, I felt quite as if I've been doing things all day, because partially because I'm also on qualia, which made me sort of more intense and awake in that sense. So that could also be a potential factor to why it dropped. But I really tried to figure out why was it that it didn't continue, and that's my first theory was, apart from the hard exercise, was that and I still think this could be something that contributed quite a lot, and that is that the day afterward, I ate quite a lot of rice. Also, not just at the same day later on in the evening, but also a lot of rice and some vegetables, but it was a mix that my dad with a lot of rice and somewhat a lot of vegetables, and also some bacon and some chicken, which had already been fried, or what's it called? Yeah, when you just put it in the pan. And he did it again, like a book. And I do know that from these tests that I've done, that I'm extra sensitive to toxins created by, or I'd create more toxins from heated up meat than the usual person does. And so that could be one factor, that it was both that and the rice. And so I don't know. And I also, one thing, when in the afternoon on that day, before we went to look at the apartment, I ate probably like a lot of hard bread, or I don't know what it's called in English, but like hard bread, but it's not from, it's not wheat, it's something made of something that's sort of better than meat, or wheat, a better grain, sort of, that's not as, because I heard that's fine to eat that grain. It's wheat that is the worst, and I ate quite a lot of it, even though I tried to be moderate, but I figured it was still something good. And I had a lot of liver, not pure liver for sure, but there's a thing that we eat, at least in Sweden, that is liver, that is sort of, it's called leverpastej. I don't know if it's called pastej in English, but it's something that makes it solid, so it's like 40% liver, and then a lot of other things, and a lot of spices, and also some, but it's also, I think it's 30% liver, and then there's a lot of pig fat, which is not really the best fat, but I heard that liver is really good, liver fat, at least for omega-3s and so forth, I think, if I remember right. So I thought, well, that's as long as I'm not taking too much on these hard breads, it's fine. But I don't know, but it could be that made me, because it's still, even though it's not wheat, it's not corn, what's it called? Well, I forgot, but it's still made of flour from these grains, so it could be that it goes out quite fast in the body, and that's what I'm trying to figure out. Could it be that it is, it's got, how much is vegetables good, and how much is it that these bad carbohydrates really are bad? Is it the absence of these really fast carbohydrates that makes you sick, or is it that's healthy, or is it the increased vegetables, or is it both, and how much? And since I've been And I read something yesterday that was about overtraining syndrome, which is potentially something that I'm quite sure I've been exposed to it. And a theory about it is that it's the combination of eating like a lot of fast carbohydrates that decreases, I guess, your insulin receptivity, and just the excessive amounts of training, so that you're sort of oxidize stress levels, because that's common for athletes, especially if they're training too hard and not allow for recovery and so forth. And so a medical thought that then it could be it's not the antioxidants as much as it is the absence of this really large amount of, because I experienced the same yesterday actually, when it's sort of, I don't think it was the only reason, because I felt somewhat like that today, even though I didn't do it. And what I did was that I ate quite a large amount of oatmeal. It's something that I've been doing for quite a long time, that amount, but I combined that with a mackerel and something else, and I think in addition it became quite much, and I felt quite really tired afterwards. But I don't think that meal was so bad, but yeah, anyway, it was similar to what I experienced the earlier days, I think. And I really think that the quite excessive amount of rice and this other grain that I forgot the name of in the hard bread could have been the thing that sort of smashed me down, because it's usually when I, like me, for example, in general, I eat a lot compared to my weight, and I just never gain weight. And one part of the reason that I eat a lot is because I've learned to do that, because I've been so heavy exerciser, and I've heard that's the best thing you can do, and you shouldn't really don't have too low a glycemic index, because then you won't be able to recover yourself, which is opposed to what's usually healthy. And that's the issue, I guess, for those who elite athletes and so forth, that they if they eat too large amount of what is usually what you take in if you want to have more carbohydrates like pasta and rice and so forth, it's not that good for you to push too much of it. And I did, after this quite intense exercise, I did eat that a lot, and I also drank a glass of milk, which I usually don't do. And yes, because I had to eat something more, and it was not empty, but I felt kind of guilty of eating even more vegetables from my parents. So and for quite some time until today, I've been quite convinced that when it went down was because of this, because I still ate quite a lot of vegetables, but I think too much of the amount, perhaps, or too much of the grains, this sort of fast what's it called, fast carbohydrates and the hard exercise. But now I'm less sure, because I've eaten quite well yesterday and today, except for quite a lot of oatmeal for a while, which is still something that's not really high in glycemic index, but it's moderate, and it's also good for anyway. So, but since I'm eating like compared to 3 meals in one when I eat it, because I eat quite a lot, it could be that it's quite a challenge for the system and so forth. So I want to take a break here, maybe, but I will continue in but it will be another video. So yeah, see you then.